So, for a while now, because of a lot of my more recent content that has been addressing hypocrisies on the left, a lot of my new viewers are from the right. And you're totally welcome to be here, as once again, if you judge the artwork that I use for my show, you get an indication that I see that there are problems inherent in the right and the left. But one of the topics that people often ask me is, why do you support Bernie Sanders? And in order to really get into that, you'd have to understand a little bit more about what democratic socialism, or I would say more correctly framed, social democracy really is. First of all, if you're watching this video and you're from the right, I want you to understand that I will get it. If you don't agree, that's fine. I actually openly understand and encourage people to have conversations about it. What I don't like, as I'm sure you've noticed from listening to me do other content, is if people say things that are just not true. And I address those things, because I don't think that mankind can move forward without absolute clarity in what is actually taking place. So, with that said, I want to talk a little bit about what social democracy or democratic socialism is and how it's different from what you've heard. And hyperbolic comparisons to, say, communist Russia or Cuba or whatever, is that we're talking about two different things. One of the major ones is that countries like Denmark and the Nordic countries are not authoritarian countries. There isn't widespread chaos and rioting. People usually give me examples like Venezuela. And it's not to say that there aren't problems that can erupt from those kinds of systems, but those are examples of state socialism, which is not exactly what I advocate. Denmark and countries like it actually have just a better understanding between the wealthy in those countries and the poor, that they'll help each other to basically to ensure that everybody's doing fine. And the funny thing is because of that, there's a clear and demonstrable propensity for the quality of life for people who live in those countries to be better. So if all socialism fails, and it never works, the Nordic model obviously demonstrates that that's just not the case. And I'm not saying it's not, that it's perfect, and it's not, but it's considerably better to where we are now, which is one of the things I'll be demonstrating in this video. And again, if you don't agree, that's fine. I'm not here to persuade you, necessarily. But I do want you to at least understand the truth, and that is that what you likely believe about what Bernie Sanders advocates and what he actually advocates are likely two very different things. And something that I've gotten a lot of conservative friends of mine to agree with is that at the end of the day, they may not agree with Bernie Sanders, but they acknowledge that he's a decent human being, that he's not as corrupt, as what you would expect from politicians who are currently running things. In fact, I remember during 2016 in particular, there were plenty of people I know who said they would have voted for Bernie if he had made it on the ticket as opposed to Donald Trump. And that even if, for some reason Bernie did, implement his policies and that they went badly, they trusted that Bernie Sanders would change them. And as a result, I actually got several friends of mine from Michigan who are Republicans to vote for Bernie in the open primary. I can't say that for certain that they would have voted for him in the general, but they all acknowledged that he was a better choice than Joe Biden, and that he was definitely a better choice than Hillary Clinton. Now, with all of that said, let's get into this issue. To do so, I'm going to take you to one of my favorite moments of the debates in the Democratic primary. And the subtlety of what's going to take place in this clip is something that you're going to have to play it a couple more times. But suffice it to say, Pete Buttigieg says something that causes Bernie Sanders to laugh, out of irony.
If we really want to deliver less inequality in this country, then we got to start with the tax code. And we got to start with investments in how people are able to live the American dream, which is in serious decline. Matter of fact, last time I checked, the list of countries to live out the American dream, in other words, to be born at the bottom and come out at the top, we're not even in the top 10. Number one place to live out the American dream right now is Denmark. And as
Now, that was perhaps one of my favorite moments of the debates. And what Bernie Sanders was laughing about was that Pete Buttigieg, who frequently would come out and say that Bernie's policies did not, basically resonate with most Americans, let alone most Democrats. Bernie repeatedly mentions Denmark as an example of the kind of country that he would like to see the United States move closer to. Now, it's important to understand the functional differences between communist or failed socialist countries like, say, Venezuela, Cuba, the Soviet Union, and a country like Denmark. The most important thing that you have to understand when you're trying to get where we're coming from when we make this suggestion is a concept called upward mobility or social mobility. Social mobility is, as Pete Buttigieg pointed out, ironically, kind of the American dream, the notion that your children are going to do better than you did. Now, when you look at the list, he was correct in saying that we're not even the top 10. According to the list, the number 1 is Denmark, number 2 is Norway, number 3 is Finland, number 4 is Sweden, number 5 is Iceland, number 6 is, you see here, we're going here, Netherlands, Switzerland, Belgium, Austria, Luxembourg, Germany, France, Slovenia, Canada, Japan, Australia. Now, the Nordic countries lead the ranking due to their high-quality education systems, strong social safety nets, inclusive institutions, and job opportunities. 17 of the top 20 most socially mobile countries are in Europe. Canada's score is a result of its healthcare, access of technology, and quality of education, but it falls short of fair work opportunities. There are several areas that India could improve on, such as access to quality healthcare and increasing its social protection expenditure. Singapore ranks the highest of all Southeast Asian countries and ranks in the top 10 for education. Now, you're probably wondering where the United States falls on this list, and it's, I believe, right about there. Yep, number 27. So even Lithuania, South Korea, Portugal, Estonia, New Zealand, for example, these are smaller countries, and the United Kingdom come out when it comes to social mobility. Now, before you dismiss this, I think it's important to note what social mobility is. Social mobility refers to the movement of individuals either up or down the socioeconomic ladder relative to their current standing, such as a low-income family moving up to become part of the middle class. Countries with the highest levels of social mobility exhibit lower levels of income inequality and provide more equally shared opportunities for its citizens across each of the 5 pillars. So here we have an easier-to-read version of the list. But the point is that Denmark and Norway and Finland and Sweden and Iceland, and yes, there are articles you can read where these countries say that they're not socialist or whatever, but by the definitions according to people in the United States, the idea of having health care is socialist. Well, these countries have it. So Denmark or people in Denmark can say that they're not democratic socialist countries, but they exhibit all of the same or very similar to the policies that Bernie Sanders suggests for the United States. And as a result, people in these countries are all much happier. I believe it's either Finland or Sweden actually has the best education system for young kids considered in the world. And what it comes down to is this. It's not state-controlled socialism in that nobody's going to come take your property. They don't own the means of production. They don't nationalize the means of production. And that's where it becomes different entirely from anything you've seen in the socialist countries that people keep bringing up. So we're not talking about taking all of the businesses away. We're not talking about nationalizing all, like your electricity bill or whatever. We're talking about, yes, you pay some more taxes, but as a result, you have social safety nets. And the reason for those social safety nets being beneficial is that you think of it like a launch pad. Basically, if you're going to launch a rocket, the foundation at which you're going to launch that rocket off of has to be solid. And unfortunately, in the United States, it's just not solid. It's extremely likely that you go into student debt to try to get ahead, and then you're just forever pushed down. And now we are seeing a propensity that people are not doing as well as their parents, and in fact end up going back to live with them. There are different arguments that could be made as to why this happens, but at the end of the day, it's important to understand, especially to those of you who are concerned about what may be implied, especially say my fans who happen to be on the right because of some of my other stuff that I do. What we're talking about is Denmark, not Cuba, not the Soviet Union. What we're talking about is countries like Finland or Norway. We're not talking about hardline socialist, totalitarian, authoritarian countries. That's actually another topic that I've had to discuss with both people on the right and the left, but totalitarian and authoritarian are not built into communism any more than they're built in to capitalism. And both sides seem to think that the other is the only one that becomes authoritarian, and it's ridiculous because Soviet communism was just as authoritarian, as, Nazi fascism. And I'm sure that some of my tanky listeners will probably argue with me. A tanky is one of those weird communists who actually thinks Stalin was a good guy. They do exist. But anyway, so when we're talking about democratic socialism, which I agree is probably kind of a strategically not a good name. Some people call it social democracy. They're just talking about a capitalist-based country that has social safety nets to ensure that people can get ahead. And that includes free health care. It includes child care. It includes, just basically knowing that if you do strive to try to climb the ladder, if you fall, you have somewhere to go and be able to dust yourself off and start again. The bottom isn't sitting on Skid Row begging for change. And as a result, people become more bold and they try to improve themselves because there's less risk involved. And as a result, the society as a whole does better. And it's important to look at this from the perspective of cooperation. You're cooperating. It's a different social contract. The wealthy people who choose to live in these countries understand that part of the social contract that keeps them in the position where they are is to make sure that everybody has a decent standard of living. And if you live in a society where everybody has a decent standard of living, everybody's happier, you're going to be happier. Now, you may not agree with this. You may still believe that unfettered free market capitalism is the way. Okay, you're entitled to your opinion. But my objective here isn't necessarily to convince you in so much as just to make it clear what the differences are, which is if for some reason Bernie Sanders or people like him manage to take power, nobody's going to come take your business and nationalize it. Nobody's going to be getting up in your face and telling you how to live your life. But if something happens to you, and this is what I typically find when I'm discussing this with my conservative friends, is that because they're doing well now, they can't fathom a world where they wouldn't be. You'll be taken care of. That's the understanding in this social contract. That's all. So, I'm going to share a video with you now of Bernie Sanders talking to a member of the parliament in Denmark. Thanks for listening.
On behalf of at least one American, Not Donald Trump, I know.
Denmark.
Denmark. Denmark.
Denmark. Denmark.
There's something rotten in Denmark.
At least this one American. Let me congratulate you for your enormous accomplishments in creating truly humane societies. Hello.
Oh, hello, Sender.
How are you?
So pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Of course.
Why is this happy man from this happy country lying to the American people?
Poll after poll seems to suggest that Denmark is one of the happiest countries on earth. Dan, why do you think that is the case?
Well, first of all, it's not the weather. The short answer is that it's because of the welfare state. We have free healthcare, so you don't pay money when you go to your own normal doctor. It's
No
like
co-payments, what we call co-payments?
we have small co-payment on some medicine, but then again, you can get special help for that if you.
And, you know, what our conservative friends will attack us on, people can't go to the doctor that they want.
In Denmark, you can go to the doctor that you want, and go to the hospital that you want. You even have a right to choose a different hospital than the one that would be normally selected for you. If you feel that it's probably better for me to go to another part of the country because I feel that they have a better treatment, you can do that.
Let's back it up here. Remember, you're talking to mostly an American audience.
Sure.
And they don't believe you. Because we know that there's no such thing as a free lunch. The next thing you're probably going to tell me is education is free in Denmark as well. You see, these guys never stop lying.
It doesn't cost you anything. We don't pay tuition in Denmark. Actually, if you're a student, you get a grant from the government.
Not only is school free, they actually pay you.
So it's not free, you pay me to go to college.
Basically, yes.
Not bad, eh?
All right, let me ask you this question. But our right-wing friends will say, well, that's all great, but you're paying a whole lot in taxes. You're paying a lot in taxes. Talk about that.
Well, it's true that we do pay a lot in tax, but we also get a lot back. You get the security that you know that if something happens to you, you lose your job, you'll get the social security. If you get sick, you'll get health care. When you look at it, what you actually get for the money, most people in Denmark, I will argue, are happy to pay the tax that they do.
It's a good deal, in other words.
It's a good deal. I know that President Trump said that Denmark is probably not that good a place to be a citizen.
The White House now released a report in which it warns against Nordic socialism.
Total socialism.
Probably for him not. For the top 1%, it's probably better to live in the US. But for the other 99%, the average wage in Denmark are quite a bit higher than the average wage here. For instance, if you work at McDonald's in Denmark and you work at McDonald's in the US, you make less than half in the US of what a McDonald's worker make in Denmark.
That's the reality of socialism.
A country like Denmark is a country with cohesion, with social capital, with trust among people.
Is that the direction that we want to go in? Bernie Sanders likes it.
Scandinavia, not just Denmark, but Sweden and Norway and Finland, have accomplished something that they deserve enormous credit for. Think about the long chain of human history and the abysmal poverty that so many people have had to deal with, and the lack of education and the lack of healthcare. But this is not a perfect society. You'd be the first to mention you have your share of problems and you debate it every day. But that they have gone a long way toward eliminating poverty to provide a secure and decent standard of living for the overwhelming majority of their people, that their people live with a lot less stress than our people do because of that security, is no small thing. It really is not.
Well, thank you so much, Senator. And can I also just say that you are highly admired in Denmark, and we wish you all the luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much.